just people, passion, power. Yeah, people.
All right, people, passion, power. We are back. It's been a while, but we are so excited today. We have an absolutely wonderful guest. I think she's a superhero, and I'll tell you why. And some of you guys may know Debbie Shore, but she is the co-founder of Share Our Strength, the organization that supports No Kid Hungry, that is behind No Kid Hungry. And I'm excited to share the mission statement of Share Our Strength, whose mission is to end hunger and poverty in the U.S. and abroad.
It's a big statement.
Well, you're behind it.
It's a bold statement. Yeah, no, totally behind it. Yeah.
And you didn't say to reduce hunger or to reduce poverty. You said to end poverty in the U.S. and abroad.
Yeah.
That's more than big. That's
big. It's
massive.
bold. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank Jason.
So welcome.
having
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for
I
having me.
I drop her
This
in
is
on the
great.
show just like that. Like, whoa, your mission statement
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
How do you?
Well, it's big, and it's important to realize that we're not doing it all at once. So, hunger and poverty are connected. They're, hunger is a symptom and a cause and a consequence of poverty, right? So it can cause poverty, but it's also a consequence of poverty. And we really have just kind of bit off the first piece for the last several years around making sure that kids have all the food they need to grow and to thrive. And so the immediate need for kids to get meals is really where we have focused. We've always known that poverty is a cause, and that was always on our radar, but we have spent these last really 12 years after launching the No Kid Hungry campaign on making sure that kids have the meals they need 365 days out of the year. But I'm glad you mentioned poverty, because maybe a little later we'll talk about what we're now doing to address that.
Yeah, I want to hear about
Yeah.
all of it, and I want to share some statistics with our viewers. There are 13 million children in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
13 million children in the U.S. that live in food insecure homes.
That's right. There are days out of the month where they're not sure if they're going to get the meals that they need, and the irony of it for American kids is that there's plenty of food in the United States. There's no drought and no civil war, and we have a government that supports making sure that kids have food, so they pay for and reimburse school meals if you're eligible to get them, for breakfast, for lunch, for after school, for summer, for weekend meals. But there are all these barriers for kids, and so our work is really focused on getting down into the ground, getting into the field, and working with local organizations to understand what the barriers are. And there are several of them. And then we do our best to eliminate those barriers, and then the meals are delivered to kids. So that's, other countries have other issues. In America, we've got, as I said, ample programs and services, but there's a lack of access, and that's primarily where we focus.
So let's just break that down for everybody. 1 in 6?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Like, you've got a daughter, I've got 3 children.
Right.
When you bring it down to 1 in 6, there's a challenge.
And, hunger is invisible in the United States. So you're in a classroom, and there's several kids in there that are likely, to be struggling with hunger. And because it's invisible, we don't have abject hunger and starvation, thank goodness, in this country. We don't have that here. Kids don't die of starvation here, but they are hungry. And when they're hungry, they can't learn. And when they can't learn, they don't do as well at school.
Poor decisions follow.
Well,
lack of
bad
rest.
graduation
Yep.
rates, more visits to the nurse, more behavioral issues.
Yeah.
Once kids are fed and eating, all those things improve. And so they're our future. And we have to make sure that they're getting the nutrition that they need every day of the year.
Yeah. Well, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these numbers, but
Yeah.
10.5% of all Americans live in poverty. We'll talk about poverty a
Yeah.
little bit. Does
Yeah.
that number seem about right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
12 million of those are kids.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yep.
it's about 34 million Americans living below the poverty line, and 12 million. And of course, the minimum poverty line is 26,000.
Yeah, I saw that. 26,000
Which
for a
is-
family of 4.
Yeah, I mean, you could double that and still be eligible, but that's the bare minimum.
As I read that number, I went,
Yeah.
what family of four can do that
Yeah.
off of $26,000?
Family at one can do it,
Yeah, like
right? I mean, that's
so.
yeah.
These numbers are low. They're not even.
Yeah.
They're not even in day-to-day real life.
Right.
I mean, it's an entry-level conversation for something that's actually
right.
much bigger.
That's right.
So let me go back to that mission statement for a second. You see this challenge, you feel this challenge, and your ultimate goal is to end hunger in America and
Yeah.
abroad as
Yeah.
well. That's No Kid Hungry's goal.
Yeah, that's right.
How are you tackling it? Like what? And you're able to actually quantify the results you guys are having. How long have you been pursuing it in this fashion? And
Yeah.
just the basics.
Well, again, here in America, hunger is a solvable problem. It's
Yep.
solvable for all those reasons I said. You know, we've got plenty of food and programs and services, so we know that it's a solvable issue. You know, we thought it was really important to put a stake in the ground and say we want to end it. It's important to want to end it. It's galvanizing. It's inspiring. It's a lightning rod for people to come and say, this is an organization that's not just reducing and decreasing the numbers, but are going to end childhood hunger. And it's doable. It's doable. You know, the pandemic really set us back a bit. It pulled the cover off of hunger in a way that our country hasn't seen before. So,
And that was from children not going into school to get the meals. What was that?
yeah, it was a lot of things, but
Okay.
primarily it was schools were closed. And
Yeah.
that's where they were getting their breakfast and their lunch and their after school.
Right.
So we pivoted really quickly, and I think, you know, we benefited from relationships that we've built for the last 20 years around the country on a lot of levels, local, state, and federal. And we pivoted to make sure that we could get food to kids in front of the school, that the parents would pick up the food, but we also got extensions for their siblings, which was not the case when they were in school, and an extension for the weekend, and bring more food home on a Friday than you ever could. So those extensions and waivers were a lifesaver for families during the pandemic. And we were able to do it in all 50 states. We granted something like a little bit over $100 million to organizations and community programs across the country to make sure that kids and their
Wow.
family, we were able to extend it to their families. And those waivers and flexibilities that were in place were a lifesaver. They were just
And
critical.
that number again was 100 million.
Yeah, it was over $100 million of provided in grants that we were able to do.
Wow.
We were the recipient of just incredible generosity, as other hunger organizations were, but we really were. And we put it to use fast. Our staff was just working overtime to get the grants out the door
Yeah.
and make sure that families and others were able to pick up the food in front of the school or in a community center.
What sticks with me through that scenario and through the pandemic and the challenges that came about from it is the ability to that you start to hear the stories when a lot of the kids go home. The majority of their meals, not correct me if I'm wrong, are given in the school environment, and then they go home and they don't get the 3 meals of breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Well, for a lot of kids, I mean, for some kids, absolutely that's true.
Yeah.
And their first meal after the weekend is breakfast on a Monday.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was so critically important for us to figure out a way when the schools were closed for a long time
Yeah.
to get meals to them, and as I said, to extend those meals to other family members and for the weekend. So, I think it could have been a lot worse, obviously, and the hunger numbers were expected to rise in a way that I don't think they did because we were able to provide all these meals.
And you touched on this. By most standards, we're a wealthy country. We have plenty of
The
food.
wealthiest.
Yeah,
The wealthiest
the
country.
wealthiest. We have plenty of food. Those aren't the challenges. The challenges are
Yeah.
you and I have had the great opportunity. I've had great opportunity to speak with you about this before.
Yeah.
And the word you keep coming up and keep bringing to everyone's attention is barriers.
Mhm.
So the challenge for you is barriers,
Yeah.
barriers, and I've heard it from you. Barriers,
Which
what
is
do
not
you
the
mean?
challenge in Ethiopia. Ethiopia was the inspiration for us to start Share Our Strength during the famine in 1984. It wasn't about barriers there. It was about war. It was about drought. It was a totally different set of huge problems that created a famine. Here, because of all the food that we have, one of the barriers, there are a couple. One of the largest barriers is kids feeling stigmatized, poor kids feeling the stigma of going into a certain line at school and asking for a free meal. And so when we learned that that was one of the biggest barriers that prevented them from getting the meal, we decided to build a strategy to get breakfast out of the cafeteria where it was originally served,
Okay.
and into the classroom for the first period, and served once all the kids are sitting in their seats. That, it sounds like easy to do maybe, but it's not easy to do because
Okay.
you're changing the way America's feeding their kids in school.
Yeah.
But once we were able to get that done through a number of advocacy efforts and awareness efforts and working directly with school districts and food service directors and principals and teachers and this huge effort, once that happens, the teachers would see the benefit in it, right? They would see test scores going up, behavior issues going down, visits to the nurse going down, and it became something that they wanted to continue. So a big piece of our strategy was to get breakfast out of the cafeteria, which was earlier, obviously, than first period, where kids felt kind of embarrassed. And or another barrier was just getting to school on time for the cafeteria.
Yeah.
So they would have to get there early, and maybe the parents were dropping off multiple kids, and by the time they got there, breakfast was already wrapped up. So getting it in first period, breakfast after the bell, or breakfast in the classroom, as it's referred to, became our strategy. And we were able to add millions of breakfasts to kids just by getting that done.
And you some other barriers you've shared with me is just the even outside of the school where meals are distributed. One block may not be as approachable as another block for meal distribution.
That's more about the summer.
Okay.
Those are more summer meals.
Yep.
Summer meals are a whole different set of issues.
Okay.
I think somewhere around 12 or 13% of the kids that are eligible for meals, only that number get them in the summer. Schools are closed. So you've got summer meal sites set up, and our strategy there is to push out as much information about where these meals are served. But even by doing that through texting lines and a meal finder map that we produce, and working with all the organizations that deliver that have summer meals available, it's still a very low number because it could be a neighborhood, could be an issue. Just awareness about where the meals are. They change. So you might have, like in Washington, there are hundreds of summer meal sites, but many of them change every summer.
Okay.
They're in rec centers, boys and girls clubs, church basement. But maybe the next summer that they're in a different spot. So there's a lot of barriers, and the kids have to eat in congregate, and that's the biggest barrier. Is we can't just deliver a summer meal to a kid and get the reimbursement. You have to eat in congregate in order to get the full federal reimbursement, and that's an archaic policy that we've been trying to undo for a long time. The hunger community at large.
Got it. So we jumped right in. We hit numbers and we went to the problems. And let's step back for a minute and take us through the Share Our Strength journey and how we connected with No Kid Hungry, how that all evolved. I'm equally as curious about you as you know this. Your journey and how all this got started.
Well, as I mentioned, Ethiopia was the kind of the beginning of it, and my brother and I both worked in politics. We worked for Gary Hart, who was a junior senator running for president, and this Ethiopian famine was on the front pages and coming through television news, and really for the first time seeing that number of people that were millions of people at risk of starvation and death. And it really stirred my brother. It just really spoke to him. I always think about it as him having almost a physical response to this news. And having worked for government for years, he felt that sometimes government's not the only answer. Maybe there's a way for the private citizen to do something. And it was really a quick turnaround in his mind. He called me up and he said, I want to do something that, provides awareness and money for what we're learning about in Ethiopia. And I want to do it with you. And I want to do it by organizing restaurants because they feed people for a living and this will resonate with them. Hunger will resonate with them. And so those were the really early beginning years. And the
And wait, and how do you're on the other end of the line, or you're meeting with them in person, and you go, what? Here goes my brother again with another. Like, how does this go?
It was really, it's funny because you remember where you are with big things happening.
Yeah.
I was living in a group house in Mount Pleasant, and my roommate yelled at your brother's on the phone, and I took the call, and he basically said pretty much what I just said to you. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. That sounds amazing. And I guess we met the next day, but within weeks, we opened our doors on Capitol Hill. Just weeks.
Wow.
No surveys, no market survey, we had a strong instinct about a few things. One, that there was a need to do something, not just when there's a crisis, but an ongoing effort for hunger and for this particular reason, for the Ethiopian famine. That two, everybody has a strength to share. I mean, this idea of sharing strength was so powerful, and I think about it every day. Honestly, I do. I honestly think about it every day. Every time I meet somebody, I wonder, like, can they share their strength to, help us end hunger? And what's blossomed over the years are people that are way beyond the restaurant industry. Tens of thousands of restaurateurs and culinary professionals and chefs are engaged with us all over the country and in other countries as well. But now we've got, corporate partners and business leaders and realtors and, jewelers and designers and you name it.
Celebrities, it goes on and on.
When you give people a vehicle, an easy way for them to share their strength, we can turn that into something really powerful and fulfilling. And that's at the core of our mission. That's at the core of our work, is finding ways for people. And you don't need everybody in the world. You can't get everybody.
Won't work.
You need enough people, and you need the right people. And then, of course, when they do share their strength and they see how it advances our work, it just empowers them even more and makes them feel even more motivated to do more and to find other people to do it with them. And so that's really the essence of. And thank goodness we came up with this name. Bill, my brother, did, because we put out a call to friends and said, like, here's the concept. It was on two pieces of paper. Give us some ideas for a name. And there were just kind of names like Weed of Hope and Food for Life and kind of silly names like that. Not silly, but just not very inspiring. And then my brother came up with Share Our Strength, which was genius, and it stuck. And it's both an action and it's an inspiring action, and it really defines the how of our work. This is how we've done our work, by getting people to share, their talent, their skill, what they do for a living, their money, their network.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. I shared this story with you. Every December we sit down with our kids and talk about who you want to pick as your charitable partner, and some of our children picked No Kid Hungry, and that's how you sort of came into my world, and then we randomly bumped into each other at a restaurant through a couple of friends, and I was like, wait, you're No Kid Hungry, Share Our Strength? And I was so excited to meet you.
It's great that your kids did that. We have a lot of kids who have raised money for Share Our Strength. This really speaks to, number one, they're kids, right? And they're kids helping kids. So a lot of young people find a way to us because they are just sort of authentically compelled to do something.
Yeah,
and your kids are no exception.
It's
you did something right if your kids want to.
I don't know. We're going to find out. I'm going to show them this interview and be like, see, guys, you should pursue your passions in life.
Right.
And you and I have talked about that too. And I definitely have to tap into that with our viewers a little bit here. What you do, it's inspirational. I assume it's energizing. I know there's work involved with it, but man, you get up each day and you're literally changing the world. Are you able to like absorb that? Do you go, man, this is actually happening, and I'm making a big, big difference in a world?
I think a lot about when I'm not going to be at Share Strength, that I'll understand the enormous effort that has gone into it over the years, and just how big the organization has grown, way beyond my brother and I. Obviously, we've got I just can't imagine a higher performing, more talented staff that we have, and it took a long time to build that. It was, piece by piece of success stories that attracted people to come to us, and we have a really robust high-performing organization now. And so I think I won't realize how big it is until I'm not there on
Yeah.
a daily basis. But, you know, one of our core values is to have fun. And we picked that, we have 5 values, and one of them is about having fun. And even though this work is serious and at times hard, it doesn't mean that you can't have fun while you do it. And our work with restaurants and chefs and celebrity and you know, watching people find, what I love more than anything is watching someone, watching the light come on for them. You know, like, oh, I'm a designer. I can pull together designers and create a fundraiser for No Kid Hungry, which just happened with Charlotte Moss, who's a designer out of New York. But people find a way, streamers are now finding their way to us. They're playing games and raising money for No Kid Hungry. Everybody has something to give and to share. And that's what kind of turns me on the most, is when I'm able to help someone turn that light on. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
It's a game changer, and there's energy, right, in a room, in a conversation, when somebody's doing something that they love, and it creates a lasting impact. And because I know my kids are going to watch this, I want you guys to deeply pursue your passions in life, because you can be happy and you can change the world.
Yeah, you can do both.
Yeah, you can do both, right?
It's not an either or. You can definitely do both. And the more diversity you have in terms of everything, in terms of profession, discipline, you know, the amount of diversity that's in Share of Strength to me is also really inspiring. I feel like we have an organization with so many different kind of people that are all coming together around this common goal. And I think when they see that at a conference or an event, it's even another level of energy, because it's not just like-minded people, it's so many other people that are sharing the passion the way you are.
Break down the organization, and I like to go back to that conversation. Like, I'm visualizing you in Mount Pleasant. You said when your brother calls and you're in a shared house, and like, that was an idea, that was action, there's a moment, and then the organization today. Help me describe the size, how many folks are working. Like, give me some basics here.
Well, when we started, we had this little townhouse basement on Capitol Hill on D Street, I want to say. Right off Mass Ave, so I think it was right around there. And there were 4 of us in there, and you know, we puttered around for a long time until we kind of struck gold, if you will. But we got enough reinforcement along the way to kind of go to the next step. So we were small for a long time, and for the first 20 years of the organization, we provided grants to mostly food banks, and that was kind of our strategy. We, you know, naively thought we could end hunger by just giving food banks money. But then through a process of thinking about, you know, our work, our mission, what do we want to be for the next 20 years, we started to think about what kind of impact did we really want to have. And it took a while, but we ended up deciding that we wanted to fight childhood hunger, and we wanted to end childhood hunger, which was very different from what we were doing, because what we were doing before, every year our goal would be, instead of raising 5 million, let's raise 6 million. That was the goal. But when the No Kid Hungry campaign was developed, we knew that we had to raise a lot more money if we wanted to make sure that kids are fed. And so it changed everything. It changed our staffing, our strategy, our messaging, our
and that was 20 years after the launch?
No Kid Hungry was launched about 11 years ago.
Okay.
And before that, very general, broad funding for food banks and other programs. And then this shift towards making sure that kids are fed, and mostly through the federal nutrition programs. And that required a totally different level. So granting is one, but advocacy is the other part. We didn't do any advocacy for many years.
Okay.
But if you're going to end childhood hunger, if you're going to be involved in an issue, a social issue like this, you know, you're not going to end hunger with grants. You have to also get involved in policy.
Okay.
Both making sure the policies that work for kids are in place, and sometimes strengthened, and sometimes even new policy. And so our advocacy arm became, I think, a pretty muscular one over the years. And the combination of grants and advocacy with policy has been really the formula.
The clarity to end child hunger is what took it to a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
The advocacy side, in combination with the grants. What's the staff look like? What's the size of the organization?
We're a little bit under 300 staff right now, about 160 or so in the Washington area, and then the rest all around the country in different states. When we started the campaign, we wanted to understand where the highest number of hungry kids lived, so that we could prioritize some of the funding and the work and the strategy. And they live in the highest population states, as you would imagine. So it's like Texas, California, Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, the states with the highest numbers of kids, have the highest levels of hunger.
Yeah.
So we kind of prioritize those. About 80% of hunger is in about 10 states, and then 20% is scattered in the others. Yeah.
Wow.
So that drove our strategy.
I got it. So next 20 years, what's on the agenda? I mean,
yeah, I don't think I'll be here for 20 more years. I don't think that's possible. So, as I mentioned earlier on, we started talking. The No Kid Hungry campaign is going to continue, and it needs to continue until we close the gap of kids who are eligible for breakfast are getting it. So that work will continue.
Can I ask you a question, not to cut you off? How do you measure your results?
Yeah, well, super important, and we didn't measure too much before the No Kid Hungry campaign. But
Okay.
once we decided to go in that direction, we have a specific dashboard around how many kids we want to feed, and we get reports back from states that we're working with, usually through Department of Education, who track these numbers. They're not all equal. Some are more forthcoming with the information, some are just more bureaucratic. So we have a measurement team in the organization. I mean, that's the name of the department, Impacted Measurement, and they spend their time working with the grantees that get the funds and looking at how the numbers are increasing for breakfast, for summer, for after school, for weekend meals.
Okay.
And so we do count, and if we're not moving in the right direction, and we look at this every couple of months in a big meeting, if we're not moving in the right direction, we have to self-correct. That's the beauty of holding ourselves accountable, and that's the difference between who we were before No Kid Hungry and who we are today. Not that we were doing anything wrong before No Kid Hungry, but we were just doing providing unrestricted grants, which are needed, right, for food banks and shelters and such. But in order to end childhood hunger, to make sure that kids are getting these meals from breakfast, lunch, and after school and summer, then you have to count it, and you have to know what the gap is.
Yeah.
You have to know so we were shooting for 70% to get the numbers up to 70%. You don't want 100% because many kids eat at home.
Okay.
So you don't need to shoot for 100% necessarily, because you want kids that can eat at home. That's a good thing. But our threshold was to get to 70%, and we have done that in some places, but not everywhere. And so we're still working towards closing that gap. But now, the pandemic changed something for us, and it kind of pushed us to start looking at some preventive measures, because during the pandemic, the child tax credit came into being. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
vaguely.
Child tax credit was given out to families that have kids 18 and under. So it's $300 per child, and it's a sliding scale. So depend what your income was, but it could be relatively. It doesn't have to. You don't have to live below poverty to get the $300. Okay. The thought was that everybody had suffered so much and job loss and death through the pandemic that the government gave out this child tax credit that had a 1-year deadline on it. But it was the biggest driver to bring down the child hunger numbers ever.
Wow.
It was just a huge lift for families with kids. And so it's $300 per child. And it was an advance, so you don't have to wait until the end of the year to get the tax refund.
Okay.
It came every month, which really helped families, with monthly expenses. That triggered something for us around how do we continue to help families get more resources so that they don't need to even access these benefits to begin with, right? How do you help families have enough food without relying on government programs? And again, the No Kid Hungry campaign is gonna stay on course, but now we're looking at something called family economic opportunity. And we're starting to just think about what are the programs out there that we can do something similar to No Kid Hungry, right? Where there's government funds, but they're not being accessed for programs like child tax credit. The child tax credit was this huge gift, but so many families didn't apply for it, didn't know how to apply for it, were afraid to apply for it, had no idea how to get the tax credit. So we did a whole campaign to help families get that child tax credit and put millions of dollars into families who really needed it. And that just got us thinking about how do we continue on helping families develop more economic opportunity. So that's the anti-poverty piece.
Okay.
And I don't know what format it will come. It could be, there are many ways to add resources to families. It could be about the job market. It could be about accessing benefits. So we're looking at all of that right now with a new focus on.
You guys are
economic
constantly learning and constantly evolving. That's what it sounds like. You see a need, you saw the tax credit, the impact that it had, and you went, oh, let's do that again in some way, shape, or form.
And it's the same idea as the child hunger at work because, again, these meals are available, but there are barriers. And tax credit was available, but there were barriers. So what else is like that we can use all the best practices and winning strategies to in another way?
Barriers. You're just removing them one by one. It's pretty special.
Trying.
So you're extremely humble. I don't know if you give yourself enough credit. As I send compliments your way, you want to get to ending childhood hunger, and you're ready to go to the next thing. I'm so grateful for your time. If people want to help or get involved, how can they get involved? How should they get involved?
Yeah, well, our website, it gives you a lot of different ways to get involved, nokidhungry.org, and there's a lot of ways to donate your time, donate money, and get involved in your local community. So nokidhungry.org, and we'll direct you.
Debbie, I have to tell you that we've had the fortunate opportunity to interview athletes and New York Times best-selling authors, and I've spent time with presidential candidates, governors, senators, and I just got to meet so many cool people in my time. And of everybody, and I'm grateful for all of those folks, but of everybody, you're truly special and truly unique, and I am so grateful that you spent time with us today, and I'm so just honored that you're willing to share the story, and then you're doing what you're doing, and I wish you tremendous success in the next 20 years, and if we can ever help in any way, shape, or form, you just let us know.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about all this.
Oh man,
I really appreciate it.
You be careful. I'll have you in once a week here. This is so fun.
Just people, passion,